Well, we're now going into the west end of the church, and there are a number of things that really matter in this. Actually, there are things that matter everywhere in the church, but there are some things that matter in this area. One of them is that beneath that slab of stone is the second vault, and it's the vault to the Poles, who lived in the old rectory, and the Foxes. And the Foxes were also rectors, and they all lived for 40 years as rectors and things. And we've never been into that one, I don't think. Then there's the font, which I mentioned before, which is 13th century at the top, and the bottom is modern. Very well, a very good modern bottom, organised by my father-in-law. The picture at the end there is probably Venetian 15th century, very, very charming. The two little memorials here are to either great uncles or cousins of my husband John's in the Pito family. For years we had these stacked in the basement of our house in London, doing nothing, and then John had the bright idea of putting them up. One died in Salonika and the other at Ypres. And they look quite good. We've put quite a number of memorials into this church, which I'll show you as we go through. Equally, here is what's called the Champa Tree, and this is made of copper, sent and given to us from Pune by our friend Zara Tayabji, who's a designer. The point about this tree is that the copper beaters of Pune were out of work and living in sort of water tunnels. And Zara got them working again. Now, she says proudly, and they've got shirts on their back, and their children go to school. And this, I think, was a thank you to us for having imported some of their work and sold it in the shop at Mapperton for years on end. So it's really important. It's extremely sharp. Don't go near it. Now, I suppose I ought to ring this horrible bell, which in my view makes an awful sound. I'm not even sure I know how to, actually. No, I don't. Yes, I do. Stupid thing. There we are. You've heard it. Now, I will happy to go up there, but if I do go up there, you're not going to see very much.
What's up there?
Nothing, except going up into the roof space between the roof and the ceiling. I mean, if you want to go up there...
Can we have a peek in?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going up without a mobile or something, or a torch. You go in and have a look. Why don't you go up? I don't have to, I've been up before. When we have services, John always rings the bell, and very often we have somebody rather good on the harmonium who's playing really well, and then this rather tinny bell is rung rather fast by John for a whole 5 minutes. Those two little plaques there are plaques recording grants that we've had from the Dorset Historic Churches Trust. We've been very lucky that they've given us so much money and we've used it well. But what they were really pleased about in the first grant, which is the one on the left, is that we'd brought a church back to life, which had become almost redundant. The second thing is this window here. I mentioned it before. It's to William Aitchison, who was in the 69th Foot, the Welsh Regiment, and died in his 30s. He was the son of a guy called Robert Aitchison, who became an admiral, but married a Compton girl. By this time, the Comptons had the house. So he married a Compton, and they came and lived in the house. And then his son died. His son from a previous marriage died. And that was the window where the staff that the good Lord is holding, which creates an area of frailty in the stained glass. And the other thing that I mentioned, but slightly forgot, is that this chair was actually given to the church by Catherine Compton, who was the wife of Robert Aitchison, whose son, in the memory of whose son this stained glass window was put up. So it was given in the 18th century, not in the 16th, not in the 17th, even though it's a 17th century chair. This church had virtually no memorials in it, but we have put a number in it. That's a plaque to my parents, who came to live in Bedminster for their very last years. And then as we go up the church, there's another memorial there. But let's do the glass. Let me show you the glass. Okay. Various types of stained glass in this church. Two lots which are really interesting. One lot is heraldic, and the other lot is Flemish, 16th and 17th and 16th and 17th century. I'm going to start with the heraldic glass. Our supposition is that it was actually in the house, and when new casement windows were put into the house, the glass was moved to the church. If you look at that window over there, and you can see that it's got a very sort of serious coat of arms at the top on the left. In that coat of arms is the crest of the Brett family, who had this house until the Morgans took over. The Morgan family, top left, very top left, and below that is a coat of arms we've never, ever managed to identify, and we're still trying to identify. Suggestions are welcome, but won't necessarily be acknowledged. The rest of the glass is all most of the glass is heraldic there, and it is said that some of it is medieval heraldic glass, and the colours are very good. The blue at the very bottom is a very fine medieval blue. Then we move on this side, and there's another piece of heraldic glass, but it doesn't appear to have, I think they may have bought a job lot of heraldic glass actually, because it doesn't appear to have any of the coats of arms of any of the Comptons or the Brodripps. And the third one along is even more of a job lot. It sort of appears to be mostly a royal coat of arms, and half of it missing anyway. Below that is some of this lovely Flemish glass, which apparently was bought by Richard Brodripp in 1768 and put into the church. Moving on again to this window here. This is actually a rather wonderful window. They've managed to put in one of the coats of arms upside down. Nice 17th century pulpit. You can imagine that fiery Protestant priest denouncing the villagers from it, giving them 40-minute sermons, hour-long sermons, them all falling asleep. And then I'm going to go across here and look at the rest of the glass, and then we can go up to the chancel. Well, and on the south side, again, there are these fantastic windows. The one at the back that I'm pointing you to now has got a coat of arms on the top left, which is actually a Morgan coat of arms. It's fully Morgan and Brett. On the right-hand side is the Brett crest of the two griffins, or are they lions? I can never remember. John will tell you. And on the left-hand side, at the upper top left, is Robert Morgan's coat of arms, and below that again is this coat of arms we've never identified. And on the right-hand side again is Robert Morgan's coat of arms and somebody else, who knows. But below that is this beautiful, beautiful Flemish glass, elegant Renaissance Flemish glass. And if you go to this central window here, there's some interesting glass. There's St. Agnes with her sheep, and on the right a rather pretty 16th century French girl. It must have been quite fun for the Brodripps when they were sitting here, seeing all this, except they would probably have been in the very high pews and not seen anything out much. Then again, it's heraldic glass. So we move to the far one here. We have, again, heraldic glass at the top, which we haven't identified, don't know who it is, quite pretty. I think, again, it was part of this job lot that they bought. And then the white rose of York and the red rose of Lancaster. So what they were doing there, except I suspect they were just part of the stuff they bought. He bought, Richard Brodripp bought. There's a memorial there to a very dear cousin of ours called William Drogo Montague, and his son put in this lovely motto, sentence, "A faithful friend is a strong defence." Very nice. He had quite a difficult life growing up before the war and during the war, and never quite part of any family. The lectern there is a reproduction of a medieval French lectern in the Hôtel de Cluny in Paris. This, of course, we didn't know until a garden visitor told us about it. Terribly exciting. We learn a lot from garden visitors. And so if in fact we're going to be having this film, we're hoping that we'll learn a lot more. Perhaps we get all the heraldry identified. That would be great. The bas-relief of the Virgin and Child there is thought to be by or after Desiderio da Settignano, 16th century. Bas-relief. Bas-relief means it's a shallow relief. In other words, it's not flat. It sticks out a bit. Rather like Della Robbia, actually. Not as good as Della Robbia either. And a little bit mouldy, really. Needs the heating on in the church more.
Please help support this important part of England's heritage by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Mapperton Live.
I was going to walk up into the chancel, forgetting to tell you two wonderful stories about the harmonium, which I have to say is not the world's greatest harmonium. But we had to supper once a woman called Margaret Phillips, who is a nationally known organist. And I said, we've got this harmonium in the church. She's rather small and she had very high heels on. I said, I bet you can't play Vidas Toccata on that. And so she did, and the whole church echoed with her playing Vidas Toccata and these enormously high-heeled shoes, pedaling hard. Good modern harmoniums are electric. This is an old harmonium and you pedal furiously to keep the air going through it to create the sound when you press the keys. And if you stop pedaling, it stops. So Margaret Phillips was pedaling hard with her stilettos. Then later on, and probably a few years later, we used to know John Taverner, and he came to tea, and he was a friend of Stephen Islis's, and we all used to play together, really. And John walked into the church, and I thought I'd tease him. And I said, John, you know, Margaret Phillips plays Vidas Toccata on that harmonium. And he stood up to his 7 foot. He was about 7 foot high, poor John. And he came in and he started playing Vidas Toccata, of course. Then he decided he rather liked it, so he went on playing his own music for about half an hour, even an hour. And all the garden visitors just came in and they just sat at the back of the church, just listening to this guy playing the harmonium. Because when somebody's playing, you can hear it outside, so it just draws people in like a magnet.
Will you show it to us?
Well, what shall I do? Middle C? On the Vox Humana, do you think? Or on the, it sounds like the bass googler, but it can't mean that. The bass coupler, I don't know. Or, why don't I pull all of them out, or most of them? Let's push that in and see if it sounds any different. Ah, well, if we pull the, oh, I see. Well, we could do, I think that's enough. It's not, I could play you The Lord's My Shepherd, but I'm not going to.
Yes,
No,
please do.
no, I couldn't. I've got to practice, and I'm not doing it now. Okay, into the chancel. We're going to go and look at come and look at the best tomb in the church, which is by Peter Schumacher, put in by Hester Wake, his second wife, and who was a daughter of the Archbishop of Canterbury, William Wake. And she put it in for her husband, who's a central figure there, her son, who is up in the obelisk, in the pyramid, and for her daughter, who is on the left. They are supposed to be drawings, images of her husband and children. Although it could be that George at the top was the son of Richard Broderick's first marriage, not of Hester's. And yes, it says, and all are here interred. There are curious things about this house and church and this whole estate. I mean, it's obviously a manor house in the back of Beyond and back of West Dorset, and yet it's got a few very exceptional things in it, which are not the exceptional things that were brought in by my father-in-law when he came here. There are exceptional things through the centuries, like this, which is, I mean, this is 1739, and that's exceptional. And then actually, I suppose you could say that that font top was exceptional. This glass is exceptional. I don't know where these candlesticks came from. I mean, they could have come from Hinchingbrook. They could have just been here. We just don't know. And that's a very odd crucifix. It's got every sort of bit of decoration on it. Some of it's brass, some of it's copper, some of it's silver. It's completely different this side. It's got sort of icons, and it's got a little bit of Flemish work on it there. And these little things here probably had relics in them of some local saint or somewhere. And then there's the memorial that John did to his father, Alexander Victor Edward Paulet Montague. Very fine, beautifully drawn, beautifully designed by Keith Ablett. This cross here is apparently Italian Renaissance. Then here is a memorial to one of the Comptons who lived here. He died in 1923, age 24, so sad. And then this is the foxes. I mentioned the foxes to you as being buried in the vault, either there or the West End. There's yeah, they are. There's another long-lived vicar, rector, 34 years. So we've got the fiery Protestant for 40 years, this quieter, I think, vicar for 34 years, and then we've got a Compton vicar in the 19th century for another 40 years. I cannot think how they managed to live so long at Mapperton unless they had absolutely nothing to do and never went out for about 4 months in the winter when it was cold and miserable. And in the vestry, I had a stained glass window designed by a friend of mine called Caroline Swash, who's quite a well-known stained glass artist, for a window in my father's church in Sussex. And these were a couple of bits that weren't used, and so we had them put into here. And that's my handwriting at the side from a sermon of my father's. And the whole window was based on the Tree of Life from the Church of San Clemente in Rome. Well, you know, parishes usually have their own silver. What is beautiful is this chalice, and I can't see if it's London or not. I ought to be able to tell. And then this is, I think, is called the pattern. And if it isn't, I'll find out what it is called. What is wonderful about this is that it has on the rim the gift of Richard Brodrick, beautifully incised, chased, I mean, beautifully chased, and then he never got the rest of it done because it's scratched in to the Church of Mapperton, 1674. And it'll be wonderful if you could get that out. It's never been seen. And it's just so beautiful. And this, of course, this 17th century silver is so soft and lovely. Look at the colour of it. It has, like Irish silver, I think it has a bit more lead in it than later silver. And it feels soft and as if you want to hold it. And then we also have another little bowl which has EB on it. Who knows who, probably Elizabeth Brodrick. And that is 17th century too. But actually used for the church. But in fact, I'm told by silver experts that it's a cupping bowl. In other words, if you were cupped, in other words, if you were cupped of blood, what's the word? Bled of blood. You'd have put the blood into here. But I do remember when we bring this out. But it's getting, if you can, and I'm very pleased to show, I'm so pleased to show it to you because I've never shown this to anybody before. If you can get this unchased inscription, it would be great. And I think you will then have had the most unique tour of this church that anybody's ever had. It's been really lovely having you here and doing this tour of the church. I don't think I've ever enjoyed a church tour more, nor do I think I've ever put more information into a church tour than I have into this one. And I hope you aren't all feeling kind of OD'd with in detail about this church and its fabric and its history and its windows and everything. So thank you very much indeed, and please come and feel it for yourself and sit in it and enjoy it. But for now, goodbye, and I'm going into the house, which is going to be warmer than the church.